Today on Hands On Photography, I am sitting down with one of my favoriteest photographers of all time. I love this man dearly. Mr. Rick Sammon is going to join us today, and we're going to get into the aspect of travel photography and what do you need for travel photography? Yeah, what exactly do you need for travel and vacation photography? His answer is going to surprise you. Y'all stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and this is Hands On Photography. Hope y'all are doing well. I'm unbelievable as always, and I got to tell you, I'm a little bit pumped up because I'm sitting down with one of the greats, photography greats. Mr. Rick Sammon is joining me today, and we're going to talk about some good old travel photography, but not along the aspects of what you're thinking about, far as grabbing this lens, grabbing that lens, grabbing this case, grabbing this big old bag, grabbing this body and that body. No, it's a whole different approach. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce to you one of the greatest out there, shot all over the world. He's been shooting for all kinds of different publications, does a lot of work with the folks down there at Kelby One. He's been on the show before. Please welcome back Mr. Rick Sammon. How you doing, sir?
Well, I'm doing great, or to use your line, unbelievable as always. It's a beautiful day here in Croton-on-Hudson. Thank you so much for having me. I love your show. I love your guests. I love Leo and Lisa. I see they're in the Blue City right now as we're recording this, in Morocco, where I was. I think we're going to see some pictures. So it's really fun being part of the whole crew out there, where I was actually in Petaluma, I think about 5 or 6 years ago.
Man, isn't this crazy? At the time of recording this, the Laporte family, they're doing their annual vacation retreat where they get away for about a month, leave us here at the studio to make sure we don't tear the studio up. But they're out and about. And just recently, Mr. Laporte and Mrs. Laporte, they were sharing some pictures online of some of the things that they're seeing. And there was this Blue City over there. And it was some pretty cool stuff. And as I was calling through the images that I wanted to talk to you about today, I saw one of the same images in there. I was like, man, that's a pretty interesting coincidence. And I'm glad it worked out that way. But yeah, today I wanted to sit down with you, sir, and just talk about the aspect of travel photography. You've done a lot of it, from doing safari and just general photography, a lot with Nat Geo. I mean, you've done a lot, sir. But
wait, Ant, when you're as old as I am, people say you did a lot.
Well, I thought you were only like 55.
Well, next month I'm going to be 73. So
oh man,
it's all good.
That's awesome. You're 73 and still kicking and looking great. I have so much respect for you, sir. So much respect for you. But yeah, I was looking at what you have done over the years and just thinking about this day and age here in 2023, how things continue to change from a technological standpoint, and things are either getting bigger, faster, stronger, or smaller, thinner, lighter, and faster, and that's been sort of the evolution. We went from the bulky DSLR bodies down to the mirrorless bodies. We went from the huge bag phones that you used to have in your car for cell calls.
I had one.
Went from that to down to the somewhat smaller Nokia line smartphones, down to the iPhone, and now we're down to these things that are, where it's like this one. I think this is an iPhone 12. This thing is as powerful as most people's desktop computers, and then it has the camera capabilities on them that continue to be just better and better each year.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's some things, there's a little bit of hocus pocus going on with it, with the computational side of it. But if you know what you're doing, you can still pull off some pretty great shots. So you've been traveling about now it seems like it's getting more about carrying your iPhone or your smartphone of choice with you for travel photography. Is that the case, sir?
Well, it depends. Like if I'm going on safari, I'm going to take my Sony A1 and the 200 to 600. But in Morocco, Susan and I had been there before, and I knew in advance that I needed a super wide angle lens for the street shooting in the Medinas and in the sand dunes. And I needed like the short telephoto lens for some people shots. So I knew I could do everything with the iPhone. So the first trip ever, earlier actually last month in March, I took the iPhone only on a 14-day trip to Morocco. And let me tell you, I was shooting RAW files. I was shooting the high efficiency files, the HEIC files, which are basically like the JPEG files. And most of the pictures were the JPEGs because the 48 megabyte, RAW files, they're big. And I know I'm not going to make a big print of this or that scene.
Right.
But the wide angle lens is a game changer. Now, I didn't get to use it there. There are new apps. We don't have any pictures to show today. But there's an app called Reheld, R-E-E Held, H-E-L-D, where you can take a 30-second handheld exposure. I did this at the I took it. I'll send you a picture after we're done. A 30-second, up to 30 seconds, handheld exposure. I have this blurry water. It's amazing. There's another one called Even Longer, which you could take you need a tripod, but that's a 24-hour. You can shoot up to 24 hours. So yes, like you said, this is computational photography, but everything's changed. So the iPhone in Morocco, I was 100% happy with my pictures.
And so going from carrying the big 600 millimeter lens to the likes of carrying your phone around, I bet that felt just quite liberating just from a luggage standpoint, right?
Well, not only that, Ant, but Susan was saying, where's your other bag? Where's your big bag? Right? And we were traveling with someone who had the big bag. And guess what? The person had like two mirrorless bodies in it, like 3 or 4 lenses. And toward the end of the trip, she was only using the iPhone.
Yeah. It can wear you down.
Yeah. Now, this is the 14. So I'm using the 14.
Okay.
And with the RAW files there, the super wide angle lenses, especially in the desert, and in the small, narrow alleyways of the Blue City, Chefchaouen, it just worked perfectly. And low light.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing low light panos.
Right.
So this is such, Susan, who's in the next office, she hears me talking about the iPhone on podcasts like yours, and she says, you sound excited. She says, for the last 20 years, you've been saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the same thing anymore. It's different.
That's the thing. It's different, and it is a bit of a game changer. And what I have enjoyed about it, again, because I do have my gripes every now and then with smartphone photography. I've been on record with that. But what I do enjoy about it is the accessibility it has given so many people to the world of photography. Anybody, just about everybody has a smartphone of some such this day and age. I don't care what your income level is. There's a high possibility you have a smartphone, and it can be an old iPhone 6, something like that. And that camera on there is just going to open up the world to you, literally open up the world to you. Just go out and about and point and shoot. And it's so much more accessible now versus, a decade or so ago, in my opinion.
Well, it definitely is. I mean, I'm on the back of a camel, right? If I'm on the back of a camel, you have to hold on while you're going through the desert or you could fall off. So I'm holding on and I'm shooting. I couldn't do this with the mirrorless camera.
No way. No way. Well, with that said, I wanted to take a look at some of your images, Mr. Sammon. you sent over a bunch, and I plucked out a handful of them that I wanted to talk through and just get your thoughts on them, and just share some talking points. So let's go ahead and switch my screen here. Okay. Hopefully you see this beautiful image on my screen here.
Yeah,
tell me about this.
This is in Casablanca. This is one of the largest mosques in the world. So here's two things about this picture. You know, I composed it for the waves. I really like the waves, like lead you into, the tower and the mosque. But when I took the picture, the sky was like boring. There was like just a blue sky.
Right.
Plus, because I was close and I wanted to get the whole thing in, I had to photograph this with the super wide angle lens, the 0.5 lens.
Okay.
So looking at this picture, I had the leaning over backward effect, right? So in Snapseed, an app that I have on my phone, which is free, I was able to straighten the tower. So from the leaning over effect to the straight tower, I did that in a second. And then to add that beautiful texture to the sky, I used Distressed FX. Distressed FX is another one of my favorite apps. So this is a result of creative composition, Distressed FX, and Snapseed, which corrected the exposure. And we're going to look at these pictures and we could talk tech and megapixels and all this stuff. But I always say mood matters most.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking for when I'm visualizing the end result, I'm trying to say, what kind of mood can I create with this picture? So here, I was very respectful. We were inside the mosque too, and very respectful of the situation. So I was saying, okay, I want to create a nice peaceful mood because it was so peaceful being around there. And calming, which is good for someone as hyper as me.
Now, it's funny you mentioned the wide angle lens, and a lot of people sort of forget about the fact that when you're shooting on a wide angle lens, it creates this unbelievable amount of distortion. Right. Whether you're photographing buildings like this or if you're photographing people, you will notice some distortions. Usually when you're photographing people, you start to see things like a little bit of bulge in the eyes or their nose or something like that. But those buildings, they always sort of look like they're leaning one way or another. And you said you use what app to help you get the distortion corrected?
Yes, Snapseed. Nick goes, the Nick collection used to own it, Nick software. So they sold it to Google.
Snapseed is a legend. I definitely love that app.
No, Snapseed that you could correct in your hand. You don't have to go into Photoshop. You don't have to go to edit. You don't have to go to transform. You don't have to go to perspective control. Right. Bang, it's there.
It's so quick, so easy. All right, so let's take a look at another similar shot here. So I'm going to switch my screen to... Now this one, it looks like it's from the other side. Am I right?
Yeah, this is from the other side. And here, I talked about in the previous picture, Ant, where the waves led you into the, toward the tower there. Here, the pattern, on the marble on the ground here is leading you into there. And, we see the world in the 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. So one of the things I try to do when we can is try to add a sense of depth and shooting through something using the foreground element.
Yeah.
So this was a color picture, and I used 2 apps for this. I used a dramatic black and white. So it started out as a color picture. I used dramatic black and white to take out some of the reality. And I carefully framed the scene. So not only the tower was there, but I framed it so I could add the birds. I added the birds in Distressed FX. And in Distressed FX, you could add all these different type of birds. But here it's the mood again. And I wanted you to feel like, and I wanted someone looking at this picture to feel like, they were there with me. And because of that wide angle lens, everything's in focus. Yeah. And this is, even with the normal lens, and sometimes even with the short telephoto, because of the sensor size is small and the lens is so wide. But this scene looks as it looks to your eyes, from the grain in the marble on the right in front of the camera to the spire on the tower there. This is a goal in my scenic and landscape photography. A lot of times I want it to look like it looks to my eyes, everything in the scene in focus.
So is it fair to say when you have an example like that out and about, Are you telling the people that are following your classes online to, hey, look for little foreground elements to try to shoot through? Is that something you'll see fairly common out and about in random cities, or not necessarily where you are there at Casablanca, but is that something that you can see fairly common everywhere else and be like, what, I can put this little element in front of me and try to shoot through it to create depth?
And same thing in landscape photography. If you shoot through, some branches, you see a lot of pictures of the U.S. Capitol, and there's like, a branch hanging over, like, I don't know if the viewers can see me, but a branch like hanging over, the Capitol. And sometimes, there's an assistant holding a branch like that. But in movies, so shooting through something, whether it's a window, an archway like there, or the or trees or branches, it is a sense of depth and dimension. If they're out of focus, slightly, it's okay. If they're really out of focus, it can be annoying. So that's why if you're using a mirrorless camera, you probably want to use a small aperture.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Just so it's not distracting, if you will.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at another image here. We'll pop over to this vibrant blue image here. This looks exactly like a spot the Laporte family had shared. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, this is called the Blue City. It's called Chefchaouen is the name of the city, but all the buildings, almost all the buildings are painted blue. So this is just magical to be walking through this this beautiful city. But here I'm using what I call edge patrol. When I'm composing a scene, I'm always running my eye around the edge of the scene.
Okay.
To see what I want in and what I don't want in. Now, I could crop out stuff afterwards, of course, or clone stuff out. But what we have to remember is that photography is subtractive, whereas painting is additive. A painter looks at the canvas and they say, okay, I'm going to put this on the canvas. I'm going to do this. But photographers, we have to look at a scene. What don't we want in the scene? So painting is additive, photography is subtractive. And so I'm very carefully looking at this scene. And also, this illustrates something else, that if you want an image with impact, fill the frame. The name of the game is to fill the frame. Every inch of this frame is filled with something really cool. Right.
From top to bottom, there's something in here, whether it be
there's a lot,
an object, whether it's a texture of note, the green, there's something everywhere, even down to this little mist, the area where they missed the paint at the top.
Yeah, right. Hey, you have a good eye. Well, I should have said almost all of the buildings are almost painted blue.
This is great.
But Ansel Adams said something interesting. He said a picture should be looked into and not at. And in a picture like that, I think you're looking into the picture. Right.
Good point. So now let's take a look at another one here. Let's switch over to this one. And I put this image in the queue as well as the following image because we're talking about people here. Yeah. And Mr. Sammon, I've spoken, as a matter of fact, I believe it was just in the previous episode, I've spoken about photography and privacy and the struggles that seems to happen today and age because of whatever happened on social media and the internet, and where everyone is now just ridiculously guarded against photographers out and about in public space. I've learned in the past, doing street photography with my own experience, I can't speak for you, but from my own personal experience, it has been fine. If I'm out with my camera and I see someone coming that looks like they're framing up a beautiful shot for me and they don't even realize it. If it's an adult, I usually make eye contact with them and they see that I have a camera, and that automatically diffuses the scenario right there. They sort of see me with the camera and they usually wink back at me or something along that line. And then I will snap the image. But today it seems to be a little bit more difficult for people to accept the fact that photographers are going to be out and about in public spaces with legal right to do so. Right.
Legal right.
And so a lot of times you get some confrontation, but you're out there with a smartphone
Right.
In my experience, it seems like that tends to diffuse it even faster because people see you with the phone versus seeing you with a camera body. They just, whatever, he's fine. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really a good observation, and I was less intimidating to people because I didn't look like a pro who's written 43 books and recorded about 45 Kelvin 1 classes. Plus, I felt less intimidating to the people.
Right.
I was less intimidated, right? Because I didn't look like. So I was able to get close. But with that picture that you showed, I asked that person if I could take their picture, and I paid the person $5.
Yeah.
And I'm with the guide, and I asked the guide, "What should I do?"
Right.
And actually, I felt more comfortable photographing people in Morocco than I would in Croton-on-Hudson, New York.
Right.
But I have a guide, and they expect it, and they expect to get paid. And listen, if I'm going to get something out of it, if I'm going to sell that picture, I would get a release, right? But I'm not going to sell that picture.
Right.
I'm just using my phone keeps falling. I'm just going to use that for educational purposes, and that picture illustrates two things. One, I darken the background in Photoshop Express, which I have on my phone too. So I added a vignette so he would stand out.
Right.
I also wanted to capture, the mood and the feeling, but also I got down low with my iPhone, and I didn't even have to be looking like through my iPhone, right? Through the viewfinder.
Right.
I'm just able to hold the camera low and see what's on the screen. And But this is something I realized when I was in Morocco. Scott Kelby said, he's known me I've been teaching for them for 15 years, about 15 years, recording all these classes. He's seen all my work. He says, Rick, these are the best pictures you've ever taken. And I think part of the reason was I was very, very excited about shooting with the iPhone. But I think shooting with the iPhone, it's kind of like you're more in the scene. So it's kind of like being in a convertible. You're like in a convertible. What's better, being in a convertible driving down the road on a beautiful day, or being in a closed car with the air conditioning up? You're removed.
Yeah.
So with the phone like this, plus the big screen, I never left this. I never left the scene. I'm not looking at.
You're literally in the moment.
I'm not looking at f/16, 1/25 of the second shutter speed, ISO, this histogram. I'm in the scene. Yeah. And I think this is a big thing. This is really maybe the biggest thing about the iPhone and the big screen. You're in the scene. You're like in a convertible.
And going back to looking at this image in particular, you mentioned the vignette in the background.
Yeah.
I love the use of this because it almost looks like you had a strobe or of some sort light him up, because he's literally just stepped away and separated from that background. It's so well done, sir.
Well, thank you. The background, as you can see, it's all this like junk, just thrown behind them, all these pieces of wood that they were working on. And it was actually brighter. It was like bright cement in the back and gray. So, I darkened that to make him stand out, because getting back to Ansel Adams, he said a picture's not done until you darken the edges. So darkening the edges is really a simple thing. What you don't want to do is you don't want to look like you darken the edges.
Right. Now this next image, lovely shot here in the sunset. What I really dig about this is you are known for, at least in my heart, for what you do out in wildlife, as well as with your silhouette photography. Yeah. And this here is just like, yep, this is Rick Sammon all day.
This was a magical moment. This is in Marrakesh. We went there. We were looking around for the best place to photograph the sunset in Marrakesh. So I'm going up in all these buildings. I find what I think is the best set where the sun was going to set behind those two mosques,
right?
On the left and the right. So we're having some drinks. And by the way, it's easier to buy hash and hashish in Morocco than it is to get a beer. We didn't buy any hash, but there's one place in this square where there's thousands of people, one place where you could get a beer. So we find it. Anyway, we're having the beer, and this woman is on her iPhone, and she's checking her email or something, or WhatsApp, and I see her her shadow on the wall, and you see her hair and you see a beautiful profile. So I'm with Susan and my friend. So I put my iPhone on the telephoto setting, the short telephoto, and I take it and I show it to her, and she loved it. Her name turns out to be Sassy. So we were talking, and then I saw the sunset. I say, okay, you have such a beautiful, you have great energy, a beautiful profile. I love your hair. Would you just stand there for a second? And so when I say stand there for a second, the last thing a photographer wants to do when they're photographing a stranger is to overstay their welcome.
True.
So what I did is I knew what I wanted to do. So maybe I was there for like 5 seconds, but I had to look, directly off to the camera left, so you could see your profile, because it was so beautiful. But you could also see some detail in her face, and this is one of the high efficiency files. Look at her face. Look at the sun. Look into the street market. There's so much going on in here with a point and shoot. I'm not thinking about anything except composition.
Right. It's so well done. Where the sun is on her, in relation to her here in the frame, just sort of giving just a little touch of glow here. Again, the whole silhouette effect, it's not totally blacked out because we can still see some detail in her face, and it's just a little kiss of light coming across her cheeks, just in her eyes, just shaping her face. And then you see her eyes, and you naturally want to know, what is she looking at? And she's looking across to the left of the camera frame, and there's just more beautiful architecture out there. This is just, again, I saw this and I was like, yep, this is classic Rick Sammon.
well, thank you. But Marrakesh was the whole thing in Morocco was just amazing. We felt so safe. We're like wandering in the desert by ourselves and wandering in the streets by ourselves. It was, it was just amazing.
Yeah. Now there's one more image here that I want to share, and let's see if we can pull it up here. This one, again, classic Rick Sammon. He's out and about. There's animals and wildlife involved. Beautiful horizon, and there's a silhouette. Tell me about this shot, sir.
This is the first picture I took in the Sahara. We were racing to catch the sun. And I see these little camel train guy lead. What's going on here is this guy's leading these people to stay overnight in a tent in a desert, which we actually did the following night. We did that the following night.
Okay.
So anyway, we're by the sand dunes, and I see this. And again, thanks to the iPhone, I got out of the car and I see this off in the distance. And I ran as fast as I could for a 73-year-old through the sand with my iPhone, because, again, I visualized this shot. I wanted to get that glow behind them.
Yeah.
I wanted to get down low. I wanted to separate them. And the other great thing about the iPhone is, the live mode. When you shoot on the live mode, for those of you, for the viewers who don't know, it takes a series of pictures.
Right.
So there are several pictures that I took where the camels' heads are like, totally overlapping. It's just a big compositional mess. So this is the one that I chose. And it's a result of, again, not thinking. If I had to run with a camera and a backpack, I'm sure I would have missed this shot. I will tell you one thing. 2 people here had selfie sticks, so I had to spend some time cloning out the selfie sticks right around.
Hey, it works though. It works. Yeah. Mr. Sammon, this is just some amazing work, sir, as usual. And I really do appreciate you joining me today and just showing off the prowess of you don't necessarily have to take that big old bag of gear with you when you're going out and traveling for your vacation, because right now here in the U.S., spring is starting to creep in, and the weather is starting to get a little bit nicer, and people are starting to plan getting out with their families and traveling. And I know there's photo nerds out there like us that says, you know what, I should pack this, I should pack that, and make sure I have this tripod and make sure I have that. And you're basically saying that's fine and dandy, but take your phone and you're probably going to be just fine.
Yeah, and if you're serious, shoot the raw files and then download them. So, and then get them off your phone, put them on a hard drive, because they do take up a lot of space.
Right. Now,
on the 14.
Now you you've mentioned doing a lot of courses for Scott Kelby and Kelby One, but you also have a Facebook group, correct?
Yeah, I started this Facebook group. It's called the Explorers of Life. It's people who like to celebrate life. And we started just a little while ago. We have about 1,200 members already. And people, you could just do a Rick Sammon Explorers of Life, and you'll find it there. And people are sharing their pictures, and I'm learning a lot. Eric Kuna from Kelby One is a member. He's sharing some great long exposure stuff, as well as some. He was at an air show. He's photographing an air show with one of his smartphones with a 10x zoom. So
Man.
he's an iPhone person too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, before we get out of here, is there anything else you'd like to plug? You got another book coming up, because I know you got 40 something books, and you even featured me in one of them. Thank you so much for that, sir. Really do appreciate that.
I featured you in one of my books. I forget which. I don't read my books. After I write them, I don't read it. So
it's on to the next.
I can't remember which one. No, but I'm just I'm really taking some time off from writing, and actually. I don't know if your viewers can see. I've read 43 books. I have like my thumb is like I have tendonitis because I've written so many books.
Man,
I'm just taking a break and just enjoying life. And actually, I'm playing a lot of bass guitars. You can see my bass in the back. Because with the bass, your thumb doesn't move, or it doesn't have to move.
Right.
So it's all good. And you do an amazing job. I really love your show, and I'm glad. Maybe I'll come out to Petaluma. I think what's the beer that's made there?
Lagunitas.
The Lagunitas. So I have to come out and get some of that, and we can have one or two.
I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine. Hey, Mr. Sammon, thank you again for coming on. I really do appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, my uber talented friend.
Thanks so much. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Wow. It's always a joy being able to talk to Mr. Sammon, and I really do. I'm really grateful for his friendship and his mentorship that he offers to me and everyone else here in this community. So make sure you go and check out all of his stuff that's going on, whether it's with Kelby One or his books. They're available on Amazon, and also his Facebook group. I'll have links to everything here in our show notes and show description. Hey, please continue to give me a rating in whatever podcast service that you're using on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Just go ahead and rate Hands On Photography, and go ahead and share the show out with other folks. Share it with all of your friends, share it with all of your family. And if you have an enemy, share it with the enemy too. I want more people to know all about hands-on photography and how we can get everybody into the world of photography and being better photographers and better post-processors. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, feel free to shoot an email. Old school email works perfectly, y'all. Shoot an email to hop@twit.tv. Again, the email is hop@twit.tv. I have some in the queue from a lot of you, and I'm going to go over those emails on a future show, so stay tuned for that. Big thank you to my man, Mr. Victor, who edits this show each and every week, making me look and sound good, even though I screw up stuff on my screen and whatnot. Thank you, Mr. Victor. No, I love you, brother. Hey, everybody, please, please, please continue to be safe out there, create and dominate, and I shall see you next time. Take care.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.